So here we go. So welcome everybody. This is the SharePoint Patterns and Practices special interest group community call, and this is the general SharePoint development special interest group call. And we do have two of these special interest groups. One is for SharePoint framework development, and the other one is this one. And originally this was called the PnP Site Score PnP PowerShell special interest group call, but more and more the PnP is getting integrated directly as part of the SharePoint engineering. So there's really no point of differentiating that. So in this call, we'll talk about provisioning, PowerShells, and general designs, architectures around SharePoint development and customizations. And then in another special interest group call, we talk about SharePoint framework and client-side development. Now, this is the special interest group call. So our absolute intention in these calls is to have, let's say, at least 15 minutes in the end Q&A time. We will start paying more attention on that one. And these our calls are meant to be interactive. So the monthly community call is more around walking through what has happened within a month and then 3 demos, and that's it. In these, I think we can unmute ourselves. We can have an open discussion after a few demos and a few things what we are going through. Now, there was an interesting actually question, and I'm going to jump on that one immediately. I think it was Rodriguez who actually asked on that one, is that where are these Rodrigo? So are the presentations available which are used within these calls? And this is actually kind of a good discussion because we've been trying to think a right format of making this happen. So in the past, we were sharing our presentations in the docs.com/office-dev-PnP. The docs.com, however, was shut down as part of the, let's say, Linkget integration decisions, because as part of the Linkget acquisitions for Microsoft, we actually got SlideShare. So SlideShare is one option to share presentations. Now, the problem of the SlideShare is that I haven't been able to find any contacts or any idea of who to actually ping on their side to ask a simple question, which is, how can I actually share my PPTX file? Not a PDF file, not image, the actual PPTX file through the SlideShare service. And my understanding is that that's actually impossible. So whenever you're uploading the PPTX file, it is automatically getting, in quotes, converted to some weird SlideShare format, and then you're able to go through the slides one by one. And that's not actually optimal, because one of the fundamental things within the SharePoint PnP and the community in SharePoint is that you, as a consumer of the material what we provide, have to be able to reuse our material as efficiently as possible, which means that includes also our presentations. Why wouldn't we share these presentations for you in a PPTX format, so you can actually use them within a conference or within your in-house or in your internal discussions. And to be honest, that the presentation templates and all of that are pretty nice, so you can absolutely use them when you're presenting something locally as well. Now the question is, so then SlideShare doesn't work. Docs.com was actually shut down. I think it's shut down tomorrow, actually 15th of December. So our right now thinking that maybe after the calendar year flipping, we'll start adding all of our presentations directly to OneDrive of a Office Dev PnP account. And then we would actually share that share only. Share the PPTX files in a OneDrive, and then use that link or sharing for people accessing the material. So any opinions on that one? So SlideShare out of question, because at least I haven't been able to find a way of making that happen. Or is there an other third-party service which would actually give us easily the option of sharing PPTX files other than OneDrive? I'm watching IM window if somebody has any opinions on this one. It could be opinion from Irvin and Paolo or Bert as well, because I think we need to make a decision around whether we share all of these presentations, because these are valuable stuff as well.
Well, actually, one option, Visa, would be to use OneDrive for business and sharing somehow a folder or something like that.
Well, I wouldn't say OneDrive for business, and I would say OneDrive consumer using the Office Dev PnP account. So absolutely, that is a viable option. But is that the only option? Do we have a better option? But if that's seen as a viable option, why not?
Yeah, OneDrive works for me.
Yeah.
Yep, same here. We have that PnP account that we can use.
Yes, we don't want to use individual accounts. Coming back on Russell's point on this one, we actually shared originally 3 years ago our presentations using GitHub, and we found that not to be optimal because some of the presentations are pretty big, and then when you're pulling down stuff from a GitHub, they actually started consuming storage, and that was really the reason why we moved away from GitHub. Okay, so maybe that's then a decision. We'll figure it out, and we'll use the the OneDrive consumer with the specific links on this one. Okay, cool. Unless there's a big deal. No, don't do that in the IAM window. Now, because we want people to have access on all of the material as easily as possible. Cool. Anyway, on the actual presentation of today, sorry for taking 5 minutes on that topic, because that was an ad hoc topic, and that's something which we wanted to actually quickly walk through. So, quickly explaining what is a general dev special interest group call. I kind of went through this already, but this is really meant to be the non-client side as development special interest group. So SharePoint framework discussion, more on the other special interest group call, which is meeting bi-weekly as well on the same time. And then on this special interest group call, we're going to talk about provisioning, site designs, PnP provision, PnP PowerShell, PnP site score, CSOM, and all of that stuff. And on this one, today, we're going to quickly walk through some general announcements. So I do have actually some new stuff, even though we had a monthly community call on Tuesday. So things are evolving quite fast in the SharePoint development engineering side. And then we'll have two different kind of a demos slash topics. So Paolo is going to talk about the detail, have a detailed look on the provisioning schema and the engine capabilities. And also we can talk about what's missing. So have an open discussion. If you're not familiar with the provisioning engine and how does it actually work, you can use the IAM window and ask questions. Can I do X and Y and Z? And then we can tell you if that's true or false. Because we're trying to figure out what's actually missing and where we should be still investing. Obviously, we need to invest on polishing because SharePoint is surprisingly complex beast. So even though the basic scenarios and the 99% of the scenarios are working, there's always some surprises on the which we haven't considered within a code. But let's talk about that one in Paolo's section, and then we have a second section with Bert. So Bert is going to show this scanner framework, which is actually something which Bert is using on his day-to-day life as a service engineer to scan site collections and sites within the SharePoint Online. So it's a framework which you can use if you are an ISV or a partner or a customer, and you're looking into, let's say, scanning thousands of site collections and process those site collections one by one, or just reading information from there. But I'll let Bert to explain what is it actually all about. And then we'll hopefully have some time on the Q&A in the end. Now, quickly, if you're interested on participating on this course, and if you're interested on participating as part of the community, there's a few different options. So we absolutely welcome community members to do demos as well. So if you're interested on let's say, gaining visibility and getting visibility in the SharePoint community, let's say it is your biggest wish ever to get to be an MVP for SharePoint development, these calls are actually a really good opportunity for give you the visibility, because all of these calls and the communications and the recordings will be shared using our official channels and pushed out using the Office Dev Twitter accounts. So if you're looking into getting visibility, these are good things. Sure, you don't have to be looking into doing that, and that's absolutely fine. You can absolutely just give us feedback using the GitHub and issue list and social media channels, or contribute in a GitHub in the community repositories as well. Now, if you're interested in demonstrating something, let's say, hey, you had a technical challenge or technical thing, you used the provisioning engine, you used, let's say, not necessarily even PnP specific stuff, SharePoint development stuff, and you're interested of actually showing that within the call with the screen sharing and telling a story and also promoting maybe your company, we absolutely welcome those demos as well. So please contact me using whatever channel you can actually find, and we'll figure out the timing and the 15-minute spot which you would get from the call for your demo. So just pinpointing that there. So it doesn't always have to be me, Bert, Irvin, or Paolo who are actually doing the demos. We absolutely welcome other people as well. And we've been having a lot of other demos as well. Now, Few additional announcements, so kind of a new stuff. So earlier today we pushed out a new documentation around the site collection app catalog, and this is now just making sure that everybody is available and aware of this. This is fully available in SharePoint Online, so you are able to now we are able to deploy app add-ins and SharePoint Framework solutions in a site collection level, not only in the tenant level, and this is really cool. We have an updated documentation pushed out earlier today. So if you go AKMS SPDev site call app catalog, pretty long AKMS address, but you'll land to that new document, which is now available. This is only available in SharePoint Online because we can't obviously update on premises with the snap of our fingers. So the fact that it's now available in SharePoint Online, it will be available most likely eventually in on-premises, but getting the SharePoint Online capabilities shipped to on-premises does mean that we need to update your on-premises servers, which means that most likely this capability will be available only in SharePoint 2019, which will be shipping later next year. And that's just the logistics of getting functionalities deployed and shared for on-premises. And I do know, Nigel, you probably don't like that, but it's just we can't update your on-premises server without you actually doing stuff and us testing that it works properly. It's just software development logistics. Now, on other stuff, so site designs and site scripts, these will be available extremely soon. So right now, full transparency, because that's what we do nowadays in SharePoint engineering. Right now, the site designs and site script capabilities are getting rolled out globally in the SharePoint Online tenants. So we're not quite there yet at the 100% level, and that's why we haven't technically announced this yet to be available. The documentation, however, is already out. And if you have followed up on the admin message center, we actually pushed out an admin message center message earlier this week. So I think it was on Monday, around Monday timeframe, when that was in the tenant admin message center. AKMS SPDev site design, that's the introduction doc in the docs.microsoft.com platform, and that's explaining what the site designs are all about. We do have also PowerShell API clarifications, what are the supported actions documented there, and also how to integrate the PnP Provisioning Engine in the case of out-of-the-box actions being not sufficient for your story. So like we promised in Ignite and also in many of these community calls, we have one step-by-step guidance on how to set up the Azure function way of ExploreX using the PnP Provisioning Engine as an example together with site design. So that's all documented in the docs.microsoft.com. Technically, from a timing perspective, by next Monday, so now it's Thursday, so within 2 to 3 days, we will have a 100% worldwide availability of the site designs and site scripts. Technically, how you can actually test it is that you pull down the latest version of PowerShell and you double check if the PowerShell's commandlets are working or not. If they're working, that is enabled within your tenant. If it's not working, that is not enabled in your tenant. And just to be specific, this is preview. This is preview, not GA yet, because we always start with the preview. So we'll need to get your feedback in. If you find any bugs, if you find any issues, then we'll need to get those fixed as well. There's no reason to sign up for any preview. This capability will be available within your tenant latest on Monday. It might be there already today. So if you go AKMS SPDev site design and read the documentation and follow up on the documentation, voila, you can actually do the whole thing as we move along. So, and this is also what we do nowadays more and more in SharePoint Online. We do not want to have an isolated previews where you need to sign up and tap programs and all of that, because that's difficult. And quite often people are not aware how to sign up. It's much more easier for us to get an open preview and then get an open feedback from the people who are actually consuming and using the capability. And I think it's again, one of those things we want to be more transparent and work together with the community openly and let everybody know what's coming. Now, a few other things, just to pinpoint these things. This I promise to keep this one in the document in the presentation for years and years. So AKMS SPDev Docs, docs.microsoft.com platform, the new platform which is replacing MSDN. MSDN is going to be a shutdown or a lockdown. All of the modern and valid and up-to-date documentation is in the docs.microsoft.com. You can also contribute on this. If you find a bug, you can absolutely do that. I just processed today a one pull request where I think the typo was that there was t was twice in the text, and it should have been tu te. So basically, the person had modified 2 letters or characters in the document, but again, that's still extremely valuable. It was a valid typo, and we actually got it fixed, and that's a great thing. But it's a great platform. You're able to contribute, you're able to give us feedback back, and if you find any issues in this platform or in the documentation, please use our issue list. So I wouldn't recommend to have an open discussion in the docs.microsoft.com platform in the comments section, because quite simply, those comments are getting lost on the traffic. But if you find an issue, if you find a critical issue in SharePoint framework or in a SharePoint Online, even in on-premises, and you can't find any help and it seems to be a critical bug, or there's an issue in the documentation, please go to the GitHub SP DevDocs repository issue list and open an issue. We are actually tracking all of the incoming issues from this issue list. They're getting automatically replicated to our Visual Studio Online, and then we are processing them once a day or multiple times in a week. So this way, you don't actually, even though you don't have a Premier support and whatever, you can actually let us know if you find a critical issue. So please, please, please let us know if there's anything. Now, there's a Philip has a good question. So Philip is clearly aware of the location. Let me quickly scan this issue. This has been reported in 13th of November. And events bug. I need to actually get back on when will it be fixed. So I can't give you that immediately. Still open, which is good, and nobody has closed down. But thanks for pinpointing that this is still an active problem. So I'll follow up on that one. Thank you, Philip. Now, on the other stuff, a few more slides, and then I'll let Paulos to talk about the site provisioning. One thing which we mentioned a few times already in the monthly community calls, I think 2 weeks ago as well, the SharePoint PowerShell documentation has also been moved to docs.microsoft.com platform. To be honest, and this is getting recorded, the quality of the existing documentation of the SharePoint Online PowerShell or on-premises PowerShell is not really quite there. So we're looking into improving that quality. The PnP PowerShell documentation is already in the same platform as well, so you can actually see all of the PowerShell options side by side. And the PnP PowerShell documentation is actually in a really good shape thanks to community, because community actually contributes by ensuring that the quality of the documentation is in the right level. For SharePoint Online PowerShell and SharePoint On-Premises PowerShell, we are looking into improving the quality of the documentation internally in SharePoint first, and then most likely at some point we'll open up this in a more structural way for community contributions as well. A good comment from Chris. It's still much better than JS Link documentation ever. Absolutely agree on that. That's one of the weird things in SharePoint because the client-side rendering technique, the JS Link technique in SharePoint 2013 was brilliant, but there was no documentation, which is absolutely insane, except a few samples here and there. But that's something which is gradually going to go away, because in SharePoint Online especially we start using the modern, and now we're investing all of our time on the up-to-date and latest documentation in functionalities, and that's why we invest our time more on the future stuff, and we're not going to fix the JS Link documentation at this point. Cool. Cool. Moving on things. So quickly updating from a roadmap perspective, I can updating this every now and then within the community calls as well. Probably should have shown this in a monthly community call as well. But coming soon, site designs with the extensibility points. The docs are already out, like mentioned, and by next Monday, and so within a day or two, the functionality is 100% enabled. So you can already test the commandlets, you can test the code. Is it working in your tenant? That means that it's actually enabled. But that's in preview, it's not for GA usage. But there's great documentation out there already. Written, for example, Erwin van Hoonen wrote the awesome guidance around how to integrate Azure to site design provisioning, and that's available now in the docs.microsoft.com. On the more Microsoft Graph support, we seem to have unfortunately missed our deadline for that one, but now we're planning to do a first week of January release on enabling that dynamic Microsoft Graph scoping for HTTP Graph clients. So we do understand that we're slightly delayed. We can't miss, to be again fully honest, do an SharePoint online environmental being frozen during the Christmas holiday season. We can't ship what is meant to be shipped. So we need to ship that on the first week of January. So our timing schedule slightly got off balanced, but we're missing the deadline in a matter of day or two. So that's coming quite soon as well. And then hub sites and hub APIs, those are coming quite soon. You can actually see in the upcoming latest CSOM API update, you can see those APIs available already. It doesn't mean that they work because the functionality has not yet been enabled. But we'll have proper announcements when the functionality is in the server side and in the client side are working properly around the hub sites and Groupify APIs. Cool. Moving on topics. How did I missed updating this slide? I can't. I'm failing on this. I updated all of the other slides. So let me actually do here something like that. That's not Erwin, for those who can actually see what I'm doing here. And I think first person today will be Paolo, and then we'll move to Bert after that. So, and by the way, AMS is absolutely old. But Paula, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Can you see my awesome drawing?
Yeah. I clearly see my name in yellow, so.
Yes.
But that's okay.
Oh.
Okay, so can I steal the presentation?
Absolutely, that's the whole point. I don't need to actually talk and present. It's your turn.
Okay. So my screen is starting to be shared. Okay, let me know when you see my screen.
Loading, 3 dots,
Loading.
Nice GIF animation.
Still loading?
Yeah, and got it. Yep, all good.
Okay, cool. So now we will talk a little bit about the new schema that we released together with the master merge of December 2017. And we will cover the schema with a slightly different approach if compared with what we did in the monthly community call. There we just covered what is new and what you can do from a provisioning engine perspective with the new schema. Here, of course, we will still have a quick look at the new capabilities introduced at the schema level, but I would like to share with all of you also what is the process that we follow in the core team whenever we release a new schema, so that you can understand how you can contribute or how you can better contribute while evolving the schema on a monthly basis. Because I think one big news that we should keep in mind is that now we are using, and since this summer, we are using a new serialization engine for the schema. So we will try to be faster in adding new capabilities and new functionalities to the engine and to the schema. Because in the past, we had quite a long process to update the engine from one schema version to another. But after a huge refactoring that we made, I think it was July, but maybe I'm wrong, but whatever it was, we updated the serialization engine in the provisioning engine, and now we can, theoretically, we could even have a monthly release of the schema. Of course, we will not do that because otherwise people will go crazy following the updates in the XML files. But the idea is to be faster in adopting new features and new capabilities released in the SharePoint Online offering and in the SharePoint offering more in general. So the 2008-01 is the latest and greatest version of the schema that we use in the provisioning engine. And right now, in the engine that we released this week, we still have the 2017-05 schema as the default one from an engine perspective. As you can see here in the documentation, we declare that that's the current default implemented version. However, we already have support for the 2018-01. But you have to explicitly choose that one. Otherwise, we will, by default, use the old one. And that's because we would like to have you do some more testing on the new schema before releasing that one to the whole community. And we are in a SIG call, so I think we can ask you guys to contribute to the community activities and to test this new schema. What are the new capabilities that we have in the schema? Just to let you know, through the home page, through the README file of the schema repo, you can always access the XSD file, but you can also access an MD document, which is lower here in the lower part of the document. And through this file, you can see from a human readable perspective, what are the elements, what are the attributes that you have in the schema. But if we go to the schema project, which is the one we have in GitHub, you can see that here we have the full XSD, and whenever we access some content, let me go, for example, to a new element that we have, which is the tenant element, and which I will explain you. Whenever we have a new element or a new attribute in the schema, I'm used to add this app info annotation to the new elements so that you can figure out what is coming out from a new version of the schema. And for example, one of the biggest news we have is the tenant element. Let me show you this element in practice. When we define a provisioning template, so the full file, not only the provisioning template for a specific site provisioning, but the full file which can be made of much more information, like, for example, preferences, localizations, and stuff like that. We also now have the tenant element. Using the tenant element, you can declare if you want to install, publish, or even remove app packages, which can be SharePoint Framework packages or SharePoint add-in packages into the tenant level app catalog of your tenant. And pretty soon, we will also introduce the capability, which is already available at the schema level, to configure the content delivery network and to configure public or private origins for your CDN. This specific part of the schema is released, but not yet supported at the engine level. We are working on it, and we plan to release it by the next master merge, by the next engine release. Moreover, we added also at the provisioning engine, provisioning template level, the application lifecycle management element, which allows us to install or update or uninstall an application, whether it is, one more time, a SharePoint Framework package or a SharePoint add-in solution at the site collection level. So basically, you can do ALM just using the provisioning engine. We also do have an app catalog section in the application lifecycle management of the template, but this one is there just as a placeholder for future capabilities that will come out. But right now, from an ALM API perspective in SharePoint Online, we do have support for the app catalog just and only at tenant level. But because we know that in the near future, I don't know when, and don't ask me when, maybe you can ask it to Vesa, but I don't know if he has an answer. But
I can say early next year. So
okay,
we're working on it.
Great, wonderful, because we are really looking forward to having it. So we will be able early next year to do the upload, publish, or removal of a package at the site collection level app catalog. And that's why we already have these elements in the schema. In order to play with this stuff, if you want to use PowerShell, for example, let me switch to my PowerShell console. And of course, you have, as usual, to connect to your target environment. And if you want, for example, to extract a template from a site using the new schema, you will have to make an explicit choice. So you will have to provide the dash schema argument with the value of 2018-01. Bear in mind that we decided, from an engine perspective, to not extract the packages that are in the tenant level app catalog. And so if you plan to do the release of a new package, you will have to manually write the XML in your provisioning template. Otherwise, you will not have it in the template, even if you do a get provisioning template. Once you do a get provisioning template and you eventually add the packages that you want to have, you can simply use the apply provisioning template. You don't need to specify the schema version because the engine will automatically understand which is the schema version implemented in the XML that you will provide, and you will be able to install a package to create a new or add a new application or a new SharePoint framework package to a site collection. And I think that's really, really cool. From an implementation perspective and from a developer perspective, of course, I can run this code, and if you like, I can just run all of these command-let, create the site, and deploy the stuff. But we already did it in the monthly call. You can find the recorded video already available on the network, and I think it doesn't worth it to do it again now. But I rather want to show you what is the process to make the schema to evolve on a monthly or bi-monthly basis whenever we want to release new capabilities. So first of all, you need to keep in mind that we have a repository, which is the PnP Provisioning Schema repository, which is the one for the schema. Whenever we release a new schema version, we work on this repository and we use the experimental branch. In this experimental branch, you can find, I would say, on a weekly basis, some changes coming up because we work on this branch. We prepare the new schema version, and once we are ready, we merge the experimental into the master, and we make a new branch to save the previous version of the schema. Once we have the XSD file defined at this level, we use it at the engine level. So if you need to suggest any new changes, any new capability, you should come here and you should fire an issue, create an issue in this repo, so that we will be able to process that one and evaluate your proposals and include those proposals in the schema if we decide to have them at the schema level. Once we have the schema, and let me switch to the core engine, we import in the provisioning engine at the provider's XML level. So in this folder in the engine, we import the XSD file. As you can see here, we have a bunch of them for all of the supported versions in the engine. And we start building the real implementation of the engine on top of the new schema. And whenever you open the XSD file, you will find this warning, because we don't want you to waste your time changing this XSD file, because you should have to provide an issue in the proper repo, and then we will include that proposal for changes in the real schema. You shouldn't change this one, because this one is here just because we use it at the engine level. Once we have the XSD file supported, we create with xsd.exe, which is a tool we have in .NET, the model on top, the .NET C# model on top of the schema, and we start writing a bunch of serializers, which will do the magic, transforming, serializing what we have in the XML files and at the xsd.exe generated code level into what is the domain model that we have in the provisioning engine. So, for example, when we created the tenant element, we also created at the domain model level a provisioning tenant class, in C#, which will define from a domain model perspective what are the properties and all the capabilities that we want to have at the provisioning engine level in the tenant element. Whenever we read an XML file, we translate what we have at the XML level into an object of this kind whenever we are talking about the tenant capabilities. So that's to give you an idea of what we do whenever we release a new version. Now that we improve the serialization engine and we have a bunch of predefined serializer objects and resolvers that can automatically do the mapping between the XML and the domain model, we are really fast to adopt new versions of the schema. And that's why we are open and we want to be open in discussion with you about what will be the most useful new capabilities that we should introduce in the schema in the upcoming month. And because this is a special interest group, I think we can be fully open with open mic and share if you have any idea, any hint, or any need that you would like to see satisfied by the upcoming versions of the schema. So it's up to you if you have anything that you want to suggest. I don't know if Veso, Bert, and Erwin went through the comments in the chat area, and if there is something which has to be already shared now or not. So please, guys, let me know in case you did it.
Paula, I just want to make one quick comment. So the schema also contains some changes around client-side pages. So you can define a page as a home page. I think there's a publish option. Just to be clear, these things are in the schema, but like the CDN, not yet implemented. So if you start testing those, they don't work yet, but they will be included for the next version.
Yeah, we have a section client-side pages, and by the way, some of the capabilities here are already implemented. So for example, using the provisioning engine, you can already provision a page. Just to give you guys an idea, let me get this template. So Notepad. Let me show you what is inside this file. For example, here, no, sorry, not this one. Got the wrong one. So let's try again. And this one should be the right one. Okay, yes, it is. You can, for example, create a client-side page with whatever name you like, and you can include whatever sections you like, and you can include client-side web parts, for example. So in this sample template, we refer to a client-side web part, which is part of a package that we install using the ALM capabilities. So basically, you can install your packages, you can add those packages to a set collection, and you can create pages which will use the client-side web part or the extensions included in those packages. So you can fully automate the provisioning process and the ALM of your custom developed solutions. But back to the open mic topic. So are there any needs, any requests that you have?
I see a question here from Massimo. Massimo asks, does it contain better support for content types fields associated to lists? If you can, Massimo, could you just unmute and explain a bit what you mean?
Yeah, sure. Hi. So there were some issues. For instance, if I have a field that is hidden, but then I can specify that that field in the content type association is either optional or required, this was not correctly respected.
We had 45-minute discussion yesterday about this topic in our private core team meeting. So yes, we are working on it. Maybe Vesa want to share something more.
So
sorry, Vesa.
So how would I put it? The problem is not in the PnP engine. It is actually in the native out-of-the-box APIs in SharePoint, and that's how the SharePoint APIs actually work. So if you hit the native SharePoint CSOM APIs and you do this, and you add a field reference, which is it is the same field instance, but you add two different references to the same library, you might actually have this inconsistent presentation in the UI. the behavior from end user perspective will remain exactly the same. So sure, the UI in the list settings will not actually show you exactly or it won't be consistent, but the end user experience is the same. So like I yesterday explained in the core team meeting, the fact that let's say, list settings UI admin view might have certain problems means that, yeah, sure, we can actually open up an issue and open up a bug on it, but we'll probably get it fixed in 2025. Because if it doesn't impact the end user, it should not have any impact. Now, if we understood the issue in the wrong way and it has an end user impact, then we need to talk about it. Long answer.
By the way, thank you, Massimo, so far. Thank you for your feedback.
And I think, Massimo, you're looking into having 100% reliable way of just knowing was it provisioned properly or not, right?
Yeah, I was trying to type in the chat, but it doesn't come through. I think we need to talk about it, but yeah, thanks for your answers anyway.
Okay.
I see another question here from Philip, which is related to he's already using the new template. Yeah, I can comment a bit on that one. Yeah, we noticed that too. we run into the same issue.
What was the issue? What was it, please?
The issue is that when you provision an app with the new schema, and you try to install that app in the same template into the site through the same template, it doesn't work because the app is actually not provisioned into the site yet, it's not installed into the site yet. And so it would be a two-step thing, yeah. So provision the app to the app catalog, wait, and then install it into the site, wait, and then and then reference it or something like that. What we are working on, or what we will do, is that we will build in a check in the engine. So the moment you follow the scenario with one single template, it will just say, is the app there? No. Okay, we wait. Is the app there? No, we wait. We wait. Oh, now it's there. Bang, and we continue. So it can take a bit longer than for your template to be provisioned, or the contents in your template to be provisioned, but in the end, you can put it in one template.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why right now in my demo, even if I did not run the code, I have two different apply provisioning template commandlets. The first one will upload the package in the app catalog and install the app in the site collection. The second one will create the page as soon as the package will be ready. What we will make, it will be to have a way to specify that you want to have synchronous events, so the creation of the client-side page will wait for the package to be installed in the site collection. But we are thinking about making this as an optional selection, because let's say that you just want to install an app in a site and you don't need to use that app promptly in the same template, why you should still wait for the package to be ready. So most likely we will have a flag that you can use to say, okay, let's go synchronous, let's go asynchronous, and accordingly to your flag, we will do what it is to be done, what it has to be done.
Thanks, guys.
Welcome. I don't know if we will make it by the next monthly release, because most likely we will need also to make a small change to the schema. So maybe we will wait for a couple of months, but just to let you know, just to give you a roadmap.
There's few, Kautam has a few comments around adding a support for list write security, exploit from Office client, and these are kind of a new properties which we've been gradually introducing in the CSOM, at least on a SharePoint Online. I think, so obviously, and let's be super clear on things. So in the PnP Provisioning Engine, we always use and supported APIs which are exposed using REST APIs or CSOM APIs. If there's no API, PnP Provisioning Engine cannot use pixie dust to make something happen, because if API is not there, it's not definitely possible. Now, we might be still missing few small itsy bitsy properties here and there, and those are actually really good to get locked. And Massimo is pointing out that the write security attribute is on list instance. So if it's there and if it's a property and it's exposed in CSOM, yes, we can absolutely get it included in the provisioning engine.
It's not in the schema, but we can absolutely include it. Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I was double checking. We already have the read security, but we still miss the write security. So yes, for sure.
How's that possible?
Yeah,
No?
yeah, too many properties.
Not my mistake because I don't make mistakes, but.
But I'm curious then, if we do this, if we say, okay, we introduce a property that is available online but not on-prem, what do people expect? Us to just swallow the error message when you run the template on-prem, or do you expect a warning, or would it stop?
Oh, that's a really good discussion point. So let's say that you're exporting a template from cloud, and then you try to apply that to on-premises. What are we expecting the template to do? Delete the farm is a good solution. Thanks, Patrick. but maybe a warning and skip the property, or this is one of those things which we always talk about internally in the PnP core team, is that, okay, should we stop? Should we do a catastrophic exception? Should we skip? Should we have a switch which is saying by default we'll give you a warning, but if this switch is true, then we'll give you an exception? But it's actually super difficult to make that decision. Throwing an error is allowed in this scenario. Yeah, well, again, sure, we get that from a certain people perspective, and that's the thing. So some people are saying that it should be warning, some people are saying that it should be an exception.
On the other side, we should keep in mind that the engine is not transactional. So if we apply a template and at certain point in time we fail with an exception because we are trying to set an attribute which is not there on premises, whatever has been done will still be there. So we can't simply say roll back and remove everything. So.
And let me be clear on that one. It's not about the engine. It's SharePoint itself. Yeah. SharePoint is not transactional, so therefore we can't be transactional in the engine either. So
the question is when it will be transactional. No, just kidding.
Let me get that back to the Redmond people.
I mean, it's a SQL server behind it anyway, so.
Yeah.
Small thing to fix, huh?
2030? 2025? Never mind. Okay. But maybe one thing to pinpoint and move on maybe on the topic, because we wanted to have a discussion on a quick demo from Bert as well. If there's any ideas around the provisioning schema, so please put them in the provisioning schema issue list, so we understand that, hey, for example, requesting a new feature and a new feature request, and then we'll know that this is coming from the community, and we can address that always in the next version. Because obviously we don't have time to scan through all of the APIs either. SharePoint has a massive amount of APIs, but if something is missing, we need to know about it. And I like Kevin's schedule around the transactional 2020, 2025 in online and 2050 in on-prem. It will be interesting to see, will there be SharePoint at that point still? Cool. Yes, I think we need to flip Bert on your stuff.
Well, I think this is a good discussion. This is a call where we have this kind of meetings, right, to talk about these things.
Yes, absolutely. And this is no doubt the intention of the special interest group calls. Have an open discussion. People can unmute and jump on the things. So
I'm trying to share. Let's see if it works. It for some reason always fails the first time, and the second time as well. Right. Well, let me quickly bail out and get back into the call. That typically helps. Sorry for that, guys.
No worries. I can do some dancing or whatever. So bad joke. In this call, you're allowed to unmute, but nobody does. Yeah, I know. Well, at the other side, and at the same time, if everybody would unmute, we wouldn't be able to handle the audio thing as well. But so maybe it is easier when there's more than 50 people in the call, have an IM chat-based discussion. So thanks, Philip. It's always good to have fun of yourself, right? And did we completely lost Bert? And I think he's restarting the whole Skype, just making sure that everything works. It's probably a hardware issue. Nothing wrong with software.
For sure. Skype is perfect, so.
Any other questions, or while we're waiting Bert to arrive, we can do an open Q&A if there's any. All hell teams, yeah. The team seems to have still some problems with the external people, which is one of the reasons why we haven't actually completely moved over in our team either, or virtual team. Is there any guidance on how to author property paying controls? Absolutely. For Yogesi, for SharePoint clients, SPFX web parts, we absolutely have guidance on that one. We don't have a tutorial on that, but I think we even have a webcasts on that topic in the YouTube channel, but I can quickly probably find.
In the meantime, now we see Bert's screen. I
think.
We
can.
Yes,
I'll
finally.
For a window in a second. Yes, Bert, take it away.
All right. A quick introduction into SharePoint scanning framework. And Vess already alluded in the beginning, like Bert is using this quite a lot in his day-to-day life, and that's quite true as well. Meaning, from engineering, we do need to handle deprecation scenarios, like for example we did with Sandbox, with XSApp, which is coming soon. And for those scenarios, we typically created scanners. Like if you over here, and let's actually zoom in. Oops, not this. Let's zoom. You might have used this guy in the past, SharePoint Sandbox tool, which is scanner for sandboxes, sandbox solutions. There's XSApp scanner. There's a UI responsive scanner, and these things were developed over the last 1.5 to 2 years. Each time, like starting from scratch, copying the code, modifying it, and getting it out. They're not using the PnP core library. They have some embedded pieces of code. So essentially, that was good for one scanner, but now we already have 3, and there's more coming. And that's why we decided to build a scanning framework. So to make it easier to build additional scanners. Now, why do you want to use scanners? Like you saw these examples that we used, but having a scanner that can do like an iteration, scanning across your complete tenancy, across all sites, all subsites, all libraries, is ideal, because you often have governance tasks. Maybe you want to kind of confirm security. Is someone using the everyone claim to expose a subsite somewhere without you knowing it? You might have some rules in your company around that. So building governance tasks often requires iterating content, and the scanning framework is great for that. For reporting needs, another common ask, like, I want to run over my sites and check for a particular property or a particular file being there or something being set correctly, and then report on top of that. Can be done. Another third reason is bulk change. You might want to update your sites, and you might want, for example, change the homepage of all your team sites. If you have 20,000 team sites, you might want to have a framework that helps kind of doing that for you. That takes away all the plumbing code for you so you can focus on writing the actual update logic. So, scanning framework is available already on the PnP tools repository under the solutions folder with the name SharePoint Scanning. And I'm going to have a quick look at that in a minute. And there's already one scanner being built based on this framework. It's the permissive file scanner, which is a scanner that customers can use to find HTML files living in their environment, so they can convert them to SPX, which then allows the files to be opened inside SharePoint without any issues. That's a different story. So let's quickly jump to the source code. Here it is. Okay. So the solution contains the framework, this guy on top, and a reference scanner. So this is a very simple scanner that uses the framework to show how you can do it. Currently, if you would start building your own scanner, you have to take this code and pull down the Git repository and just reference the framework via code. Maybe in the future, if there's demand, we could also do like a NuGet package for this one.
That would make sense.
So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, then it's easier, and then the NuGet package can depend on the latest PnP SiteScore NuGet package. So you always get kind of the latest in to build your scanner. Okay, scanning framework. I'm actually going to show the usage. I think that's more interesting, and then do a quick run of the code. So one of the key things why we have the scanning framework is support for a unified set of parameters and unified kind of supporting all different types of authentication means. So here you see a command line and that I use in the testing. Now, when you look into the actual scanner, you see like there's a ton of command line options, but they are consistent and the same for all your scanners that you build, because the command line options, for example, command line options around authentication are in the framework. So this reference scanner can support Azure AD authentication, regular SharePoint app only, just credentials, because all of this is embedded in this SharePoint framework as a support. So once you start to use the framework, all your scanners have all the typical authentication needs. Your scanner will also support multi-threading, because the scanning essentially is based on the PnP time module framework underneath. So you have a multi-threaded scan engine. You can configure how many threads you want to run, which is critical if you want to scan like hundreds of thousands of site collections. We have a very flexible scoping mechanism to kind of scope which sites are being used by the scanner. So you don't necessarily want to always scan your complete tenancy. You can, but you often want to scan a subset of your tenant. And here you see this -r parameter kind of telling me like, oh, scan only the sites which start with a D or an E. But you can scan a complete tenant. You can use search to say like, give me all the sites with a particular site template, and I'm going to scan those. So there's lots of flexibility in the framework for you to reuse and for your own scanners. Let's have a look at this reference scan job. So this is the sample scanner created using the framework. And this is all the code there is for multi-threaded scanner. Essentially, and this is a pretty simple sample. So the meat of the scanner is in this event handler, which you have to implement. And then in the event handler, if I scroll down, the actual logic happens. So this one is fired per site collection, and then you can do whatever you want. And in this case, the scanner sample contains 3 small individual samples of implementations. So a very basic sample that just testing the site collection level, a search-based sample that then uses search inside the scanner, because we have support for search. I think like see distant search, so there is built-in support to do easy searches. So you often want to use search to speed up the scanning work, so you have that option in here as well. And there is this example, subsite iteration, where the scanner will give you all the subsites, and then you can just iterate the subsites. It shows you also good patterns like, okay, we're going to load site-scoped content and web-scoped content, but site-scoped content is only loaded once, for example. Well, there's a ton of things in there to figure out and have a look at. But I think overall, Vesa, do we still have time for a demo? Maybe. Well, the demo isn't super interesting, actually. It's just running. You see a command output, but nevertheless, let's do a quick F5.
If you can quickly do that, that's always good.
Yeah.
It's compiling.
It's living. It does work, though. But it's not fake code.
I think the key point what you said there a few times, just to reiterate on that one, this one is based on the SharePoint, the time module framework, which is part of the PnP core component, and it actually gives you a reliable method of doing multi-threading against SharePoint Online. Now, if you do too many threads and too many loads, yes, we will throttle you in the SharePoint Online, but there is a nice framework to actually handle the code and having a multi-threaded experience to, let's say, modify sites in a way. And
Yes.
this one is actually
You
showing
only
that
have-
quite nicely.
Yeah. So you as developer, the main thing that you as developer write is essentially the logic. Like in this case, the logic is this really like is there actually is not really a logic, even just grabbing the title and storing in a scan result. But imagine your logic here doing the task that you want to do, making a change, reading something, storing the data in a result. So that's the key thing that you have to focus on, and that's essentially it. Even the reporting out the CSV files and properly dealing with that, because you can have carriage returns and embedded characters that break CSV. Everything is part of the framework, so you can really solely focus on the logic and get your thing done.
Yes.
When it runs, it always creates a subfolder inside the folder where you run the exe, so that's by design. So you never overwrite existing scan results, so you always get a new folder, and in there you get files. In this case, you also have an error file indicating the errors, a scanner summary showing like how long did it run, which version was run, because you want to be able to figure out later on which version was used for the data, and then the actual data. And you can have multiple data files. It's all up to you to design. There will be a new, a quick sneak preview. We're building a new scanner that will help customers modernize classic theme sites. And the scanner will be based on this framework. And essentially, it will analyze your tenant and say, like, these sites are ready for Groupify, and these sites are not ready for Groupify, and this reason why, and it will give you a massive amount of details around your sites to help drive modernization. It will also look inside the pages, or in your classic web pages or wiki pages, and analyze those so you can prepare for transforming those classic pages into modern pages. So the scanner is in development, will end up on GitHub, not that year anymore, I think early next year. So.
Yeah. And anyway, the Groupify API and all of that is coming early next year, so that's from that perspective it makes sense. And just been one small point on that one before we close, because we run out of time. So obviously this kind of a scanners and everything else, somebody might feel that hey, you're now tackling on our ISV story, or you're tackling on something else, and that's not what we want to do with this stuff. So we want to provide a generic example, which, as you can see, this is not a really user friendly, and sure, people can actually take all of this open source code and repackage that and make their own offerings around whatever they want to do. Or then if it's sufficient for some projects, they can use the scanners and outputs as such within their customer engagements or their day-to-day work. So, but we're not planning to compete against any ISVs. We're not planning to go to the ISV business, and we're not planning to make any effort on polished UIs for all of this tooling and on anything like that. So just want to be super clear on that one. Anything else you want to add there, Bert?
No, I think that's correct. So it's a starting basis for you.
Yes. And
it does work. It's simple, but
exactly.
It's not officially supported. There is no company behind supporting the actual scanner implementation, but
correct.
APIs are supported.
Yes, we're using out-of-the-box APIs, native APIs. Those are absolutely supported, but the wrapping on top of that one is not under the Microsoft supported statements, whatever that means nowadays, with open source and everything else. I'm trying to get back on the slides, and only for the sake of closing the presentation. And again, I'm flipped on the first slide, so skipping on the last slide. Now, we didn't have a massive amount of time in the end for Q&A. We had a Q&A between the sessions, but in the future we're trying to cut down the demos and have much more open discussions in the special interest group calls, because I think people need to have more time on asking questions and pinpoint challenges. And if you find an issue, we in SharePoint Engineering also, we want to know about those issues so we can help you to get them resolved. We have the next special interest group call on around the general SharePoint development in the 28th of December. We are playing PnP team, so when we do not celebrate on holidays, we are working. And then the next SharePoint Framework Special Interest Group is next week on 21st of December. These are all at 7 a.m. Pacific time, which means, let's see, 3 p.m. general GMT time. but depending on your interest, you can join. Depending on your interest, you can watch the video. This is recorded. YouTube will have the video recording available within 24 hours. But thank you, Bert. Thank you, Paolo. Thank you for great discussion, Massimo participating on the discussion, and other people in the Iron Window. I'll follow up on some of the links, and the recording will have notes on the links and references which we have covered in the today's call. So all of that goes live in the social media in 24 hours tomorrow. So typically in 18 hours or whatever. But thank you, everybody, and we'll be absolutely in touch. Cheers. Bye-bye.